So I heard there was some wondering about my name and how it's spelled and it was incorrect. So there's this amazing story about my name.
All right.
Not really. It was an error on my birth certificate. And there's a story. I didn't know that until a few years ago. I called my mother. I said, you know what? People always remark about how beautiful my name is and how they've never heard of another Samanthur. And, you know, what does it mean, Mom? And after 5 minutes of belly laughing on the phone, not being able to catch her breath, she goes, it's a mistake! I said, oh, okay. Great. But today, it is only appropriate to talk about one of my favorite stories in the Bible. And we've been talking a lot about being refreshed. And this is the title of the day. And just even hearing the sharing of the women, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, sharing of your lives. But I want to talk about the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well. And that's only appropriate that we talk about a well and water and being refreshed at the well. So, you know, the Samaritan woman, she went to the well with her jug of water. Instead, she got a lot more than she expected that day. She got cleansed, and she got a refreshed and spiritual life. She was a woman with an appointment, and she didn't even know it. Isn't it amazing how sometimes we stumble into a blessing? I love that she doesn't have a name assigned to her. You know, just the Samaritan woman. And honestly, I believe it's because it helps us to be able to step into her shoes. We can relate to her. We can step into her life. It could be you, it could be me. You know, anyone in this room, any one of us can be the Samaritan woman. And today you're here, maybe you come every year. You know, maybe someone invited you, and you're here for the very first time. But I dare say that today you are a woman with an appointment. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a little bit of John chapter 4. If you have your Bible, please feel free to open there with me. I'm going to start in verse 1 and just read through, and then I'll go from there. Just want to read the narrative that I'll be sharing from. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John. Although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with the Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with and the well is deep. Where are you going to get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming to draw water." He told her, "Go call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet the time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and truth. The woman said, I know that Messiah called Christ is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Going on to verse 28. Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? They came out of the town and made their way towards him. Verse 39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them. And he stayed 2 days. And because of his word, many more became believers. They said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world. So at this well, the Samaritan woman meets a man named Jesus. I love this encounter. It's really both transformative and surprising all at the same time. In this encounter with the woman, Jesus speaks to her. He says, will you give me a drink? At this point, Jesus is breaking all kinds of barriers. He's breaking social and cultural barriers here with her. And the first barrier that Jesus is breaking is a gender barrier. According to cultural norms, a Jewish man was not supposed to speak to a woman, not in public. But here, Jesus never treated this woman the way that society dictated. He didn't. He speaks to her. The second barrier that he's breaking here is racial. The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? Jews don't associate with us. Did you catch that? Twice she mentions her nationality. Why? Because the Jews thought of the Samaritans as impure, unclean. They were enemies. They didn't like them. They were inferior. Jews had nothing to do with Samaritans. But here you have Jesus, and he's asking her for a drink. He's talking to her, and she's surprised. It's just not normal. That's not how it's supposed to happen. The third barrier that Jesus breaks here is contact. More specifically, when Jesus asks this woman for a drink of water, what is he going to drink from? That means he's going to have to touch her cup or her jar, whatever it is. He's going to have to touch it. A Jew touching the cup of a Samaritan? That would have made him ceremonially unclean. That makes him unclean. Yet, he asked her for a drink of water. Do you see the vulnerability, the humility, the love in that? Where he was willing to put himself, the position he was willing to put himself in. He wasn't politically correct. He just wanted to know her. He's telling her, I see you. Not who you think I am supposed to see. I see you. There is a book I really like. It's called Cast of Characters. It's by Max Lucado. And in this book, he talks about an epitaph that he once read for a woman named Grace Llewellyn Smith. In this epitaph, no date of birth is listed, no date of death, just the names of her 2 husbands and this epitaph. Sleeps, but rests not. Loved, but was loved not. Tried to please, but pleased not. Died as she lived, alone. Such words of futility. Do you know a Grace Llewellyn Smith? Could it be you? A victim of futility, that unless someone intervenes, her epitaph is destined to be theirs, yours, I think even listening to Kim share, that was kind of what she was. And she was able to have someone intervene and bring her to the well to meet Jesus, to be refreshed. As a Samaritan woman, I think when you think of the Grace Llewellyn Smith epitaph, if she was going to be in the New Testament, she would be the Samaritan woman. It's this epitaph of insignificance. And it could have been hers, except for an unexpected appointment with Jesus. As a Samaritan woman, she knew this thing of racism. As a woman, she experienced the glass ceiling of sexism. She'd been married to 5 men, 5 different marriages. Think about it, 5 different rejections. Regardless of whether they were from tragedy or her own scandal. It could be easy to judge her, but we don't know what her circumstances were. We really don't. She knew the sound of slamming doors. Can't we relate? This woman, when you go back to her, if you look at her cultural system that she was raised in, her identity was really wrapped in her marital status. It was wrapped in her reproductive health. We never hear about children. Could she have possibly been divorced many times because she couldn't bear children? We don't know. But we can relate to the emotional pain. She seems hopeless, enslaved. Kim talked about the satisfaction. This woman was dissatisfied. Maybe she was feeling trapped, living as if shackled, not realizing there's an alternative. And on this particular day, she came to the well at noon. Why didn't she go early in the morning with the other women? Maybe she had. Maybe she just needed extra water. Or maybe not. Maybe she was really just avoiding the other women. A walk in the hot sun is just a small price to pay to avoid the stares, the slander. Here she comes. Have you heard? Shh, did you know? Shh, here she is. So here she is. She came to the well. She probably thought, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need this. I'm not going to be bothered. Instead, she comes to the well and finds a man sitting there who saw her. Isn't it nice to be seen? For someone to really see you. Not, sometimes we can walk in a room and just wonder, what am I going to do with my powers of visibility? But for her to walk and to be seen. And then he talks to her, respectfully. He tells her about a spring of water that would quench not just her physical thirst, but a deep soul thirst. He gives her this promise. I bet you it sounded so good to her, so refreshing to hear those words. He gave her a new identity at that well. He gave her meaning at that well. He helped her understand true freedom at that well. And she left there satisfied and hopeful. And I hope today that is something you can leave here with. How did he give her identity at the well? How did he change her identity? Our identity consists of our sense of self. It's durable. It's the core of who we are. But then there's the other part of our identity that our culture pushes on us. It's that invisible part that we don't necessarily see. This process labels our worth, our value, our significance. Think of our American society. How do we introduce ourselves? Where did you go to school? What do you do? How many children do you have? Are you married? Why don't you have children? You go through that, and we put value on things like our education status, our marital status, our employment status. We label people based on their ethnicity. Well, what are you? You don't fit in a box. Isn't it the truth? Can you imagine how this woman's identity was skewed based on her culture? She was a woman. a Samaritan, an outcast. She had been mistreated, emotionally wounded, disillusioned. Honestly, she may have grown used to rejection, being used, abandoned. Some of us can relate to that. She's relatable. She had grown used to being invisible. Maybe she had developed a really tough exterior to mask the pain that no one really saw. I don't know if any of you have ever had those tears at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, you know, that one tear that drops in the pillow? The one that you won't let anybody see. You know, I think for me, growing up, it's funny, standing here, I am a true introvert. This is outside of my comfort zone. To be up here talking in front of a whole bunch of women I do not know. I actually brought my friend with me so I can keep looking at her. And so it's good to see Michelle too, because I'm like, frame of reference, frame of reference. But this is completely outside of my comfort zone. You know, growing up, what I like to do, read books and not engage. When I wanted to, sure. But generally, I just wanted to be by myself. But having experienced a lot of abuse in my childhood, I learned to mask my pain differently. I became a social butterfly. Because you see, it's interesting, as human beings, we're selfish. And we really enjoy talking about ourselves. So what I started doing is becoming the social butterfly who got other people to talk about themselves. So I wouldn't have to talk. I would just buzz from flower to flower. But I masked my pain for years. I became something else. I was trying a different form of freedom, and at night, as I got older, and at night when I couldn't talk to anyone, the tears, the things that nobody saw, the pain that no one knew that I endured, it was eating me away. The question for you is, how are you masking your pain? What is the pain that you have that you're masking? If there's a need, there's a need. No matter how you dress it, there's still a need. And unattended needs are dangerous because they make us desperate, and desperate people do desperate things because of their thirst. You know, when someone is experiencing physical thirst, we don't really understand physical thirst in America, but because we have access to water. And interestingly enough, actually, most Americans do not recognize their thirst trigger. They tend to think they're hungry when really they're thirsty. Ooh, don't we do that spiritually? You know, when someone is experiencing physical thirst, the symptoms present as fatigue, blurry vision, and inability to think clearly. It's excruciating. It's dangerous. That was the state the Samaritan woman was in. And I dare say that's the state some of us are in. Her response to Jesus' request for water, it was, "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself?" Now, remember we talked about earlier, the Samaritans and the Jews had issues, conflict, and the Jews felt superior. So this woman's being a little sarcastic here. Like, really? You don't even have a bucket. You won't give me water. She really doubts Jesus' capacity to give her water. She sees that Jesus has nothing to draw water with. She is spiritually blind. And she automatically doubts. She doesn't see what's right in front of her. You know, it's interesting to see how the two types of water are being confused. Jesus is trying to make her understand that she needs spiritual water, essentially him. So her thirst could be calmed. And she's talking about just that plain old drinking water, what she knows. what's familiar. What's familiar to us? Those dead-end relationships. Do you know the reason that the insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and getting the same result?
Yep.
Some of us are insane.
Yes, we are. Yes.
And Jesus wants her to stop thinking about how deep the well is. We can get stuck in our mess and just think, I can't get out. It's just so much. I just want to lay in bed, pull the cover over my head. Jesus is saying, stop worrying about how deep the well is. Forget that I don't have a bucket to draw it out. Forget about the physical water. Forget about the familiar. And focus on the spiritual living water. And he tells her, if you drink from this well, you're going to be thirsty again. But if you drink from my water, you will never thirst again. And she still doesn't get it. She's still thinking very familiar, physical. But if you listen, pay attention to what we were reading, her attitude is beginning to change some. Because the first time she addresses Jesus, she says to him, you are a Jew. But did you notice? Now she calls him Sir. The Samaritan woman's unexpected appointment with Jesus was beginning to change her view of herself, her identity. Jesus was changing the conversation with her, releasing her from these spiritual symptoms of spiritual thirst. He was opening her eyes to an alternative way. He was giving her meaning. One of the things she was looking for. Go call your husband and come back. Can you imagine her heart must have sunk, went right down to her stomach? Don't you hate that? You're in a conversation, someone asks you something and you're like, oh, this was going so well. I didn't have to do that. But here was a Jew who didn't care that she was a Samaritan. Here was a man who didn't look down on her. He treated her with respect. Here was the closest thing to gentleness she probably had seen in a really long time. And now he was asking her about that. Anything but that. When I read this verse, I thought, what does her husband have to do with the drinking water? This doesn't really go with the conversation. Why did Jesus do that? But it does. Because Jesus is touching the very core of her need. Before this woman could receive living water, she had to understand that she desperately needed it. And he wanted to change her attitude from just a plain discussion to an attitude of confession. He wanted her to be aware of her need for him before she took the living water that he was offering her. And maybe she considered lying. Maybe she wanted to change the subject. Maybe she wanted to leave. And that's okay, because she stayed.
Right. Yeah.
It's not what we want to do, it's what we do.
Amen.
She stayed. And she told the truth. I have no husband. She's probably thinking, well, I done told him that maybe he'll stop asking me some questions. This is gonna put a stop to it. When I say that, he's gonna be like, oh, okay. That's not what happened, is it? You're right. You have 5 husbands, and the man you are now with is not your husband. But there was no criticism. There was no anger. No judgment. No lectures. Because Jesus wasn't seeking perfection from this woman, but he was seeking honesty. Amen. Sir, I can see that you are a prophet. Translation, oh no you didn't. She says, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. You know, the Samaritan woman here is starting to feel a little uncomfortable. The heat's turned up some. Because Jesus knows so much about her. And then she does something we're really all guilty of. She changes the conversation to something that isn't quite so personal. You know, kind of just switches it up. She doesn't want to talk about her personal life. Because, honestly, Jesus is touching some areas that are pretty painful. Too painful for her. And she changes the conversation by asking, so, where are we supposed to worship? But again, her attitude is changing. First, she called him a Jew. Then she calls him sir. Now she calls him a prophet. And when she realizes that Jesus is indeed a prophet, she does ask on a deeper level, where do we worship God? This is what her heart has been searching for. She asked a question that revealed a gaping hole in her soul, her need for meaning, purpose. Because she had drank a lot of false waters, and she was still thirsty. And now she wants to know, where can I find God? Jesus says to her, believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. And then he looks at her and says, I, who speak to you, am he. This is amazing. This is amazing. Amazing. Jesus had never expressed himself so openly and clearly as he did with her, not even to his own disciples. He clearly tells this woman, I who speak to you am he, the Messiah. I am the Messiah. I will explain everything to you. I am the one who's going to give you living water. You have searched for this in all the wrong places, in meaningless relationships. But come, and I will satisfy this thirst, that hunger that you're searching for. That is easily the most overlooked phrase in this whole chapter. But it's the most important one. She is the first person to experience Jesus' big reveal. The most insignificant person in the region. In that conversation, he lets her know, I am your creator. I am your designer. I know your purpose. I am the meaning that you've been seeking. In no uncertain terms, he tells her, there is no other alternative but me. I am it. And you know why he's able to reveal himself to this woman? Because she was open to truth. And she was honest about her situation. Can he reveal himself to you? Are you aware of your need for meaning, purpose? Can you accept that Jesus is your only alternative?
Amen.
You know, we can tend to think, especially in our society as Americans, we're free to do whatever we want, whenever we want. And you know, while I was writing this, I had this thought in my head. I love the Sound of Music and Julie Andrews. And I thought, I could see the woman in the well just in open fields. It's going somewhere. With her jug of water, just knowing, I mean, none of these people around, I don't care. The snow glows white on the mountain tonight. Not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. Couldn't keep it in. Heaven knows I tried. Don't let them in. Don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal. Don't feel. Don't let them know. Well, now they know. Let it go. Let it go. hold it back anymore. Let it go, turn away, slam the door, I don't care. I don't care what you're gonna say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway. It's funny how some distance makes everything seem small, and the fears that once controlled me can't control me anymore, or control me at all. It's time to see what I can do to test the limits and break free, or break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. But she wasn't free, and neither are we. You know, it seems like this woman went against cultural norms to some degree. She was living with a man. And it seems like she may have been taking her freedom into her own hands. But at what cost? The absence of all restraint. I can do what I want, when I want. Not so. The problem with that pattern about freedom is that our desires contradict. Some are liberating, and some are debilitating. And autonomy is not really workable when it comes to freedom. It's just not. Real freedom comes from giving up other freedoms. It's not being able to do what you want. It's sifting through and choosing the most liberating ones. Think about in love relationships. You have to give up freedoms the deeper you get in. There must be adjustments. There must be compromises. I mean, imagine some of you in the room who are married or dating. Let's talk about people who are dating. And you decide to tell your boyfriend, girlfriend, your boyfriend, that you are that you are leaving town. I'm going to go away for a few weeks. Oh, when are you coming back? Oh, I don't know. I don't need to answer to anyone. I'm free. I do what I want, however I want to. So I'll see you when I get back. I think the next part of the conversation would be, oh, we're breaking up. Try doing that with your husbands. Try doing that with your kids. You don't get to just be free and do what you want when you want, however you want. You know, Jesus offered this Samaritan woman a love relationship. He gave up his divine freedom to become a mere man. He gave up his cultural norms to have this encounter with her. He adjusted for her. He sacrificed his freedom, his status for her. Essentially for you, for me. And that captured her heart. Isn't that what we all desire? This unexpected appointment with Jesus gave her authentic hope and satisfaction. No longer did she need to seek validation in her experiences. They simply couldn't deliver. But now she could stand on the hope that the Messiah came and gave to her. And that intrigued her. Sir, give me this water so I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" You know, the Samaritan woman left her jar behind. She found living water, she found true freedom, and she wanted to share it with others. You know, you have to admire her, because in all probability, she wasn't really popular with the Samaritans. And so they almost certainly didn't want to have anything to do with her. Yet, because of what she had learned at the well, she was willing to be rejected and humiliated. Because she had found true freedom. The well, Jesus at the well, the encounter, had that kind of impact on her. She wanted to share the good news with them. She wanted to let them know that she met the Messiah. And she makes an invitation, come see a man who told me everything I did. Leaving her jar, she went back to town. Come on, I want you to know he said everything. Everything. And they followed her. There was something different about her. First of all, she either seemed real crazy or this woman is coming to talk to us, really? There was something different about her this time. Have you wondered what God would do if you got honest about your secret sin? Removed your mask? Stop pretending? Allowed him in? I know this woman, I'm sure, wondered, what would Jesus think? What would this man think? She must have wondered, would he be angry when he learned the truth about her? She didn't know he already knew it. Turn away in disgust, think her worthless? No. He came for her. As we get to the end of the story, did you notice what she forgot? Her water jug. She left behind the jug that caused her shoulders to droop. She left behind the weight she came with. Suddenly, the shame of the past disappeared. The insignificance of her life was absorbed by the significance of the moment. God is here. God has come. God cares for me. That is why she forgot her water jar. That is why she ran to the city. That is why she grabbed the first person and said, come! I just talked to him. He knows everything about me. And he loves me anyway.
Amen. Amen.
She was refreshed. You know, for some of you, the story of the Samaritan woman is touching but unrelatable. You belong. You're needed and you know it. You've got more friends than you can keep up with, more responsibilities than you can complete. Insignificance is not really an adjective that occupies your mind. Be thankful. But others of us are different. Our ears perked at Grace Smith's epitaph because we can relate. It could be us. You know why the Samaritan woman was avoiding people? Because sometimes you do the same. You've wondered what it would be like to have one good friend. You've been in love. You've been used. You've been emotionally wounded. And you wonder, is it worth it to let someone else in? Is it worth it to go through emotional pain again? And you too have wondered, where in the world is God? I would say, if that's you, ask the person you came with to help you find him, to learn about him. You know, the people believed, not only because of the Samaritan woman, but because they also drank from the living water of Jesus. And if you've never drank from the living water of Jesus, I'd invite you to do that.
Amen.
Know this man. Know the Savior of this world. The Samaritan woman went to the well to get a jug of water. Instead, she got much more, including a cleansed and refreshed spiritual life. She was a woman with an appointment, and she didn't even know it. Isn't it amazing how sometimes we stumble into a blessing? No yesterdays are ever wasted for those who give themselves to today. Let's make today count.